Folks at home, welcome back to the Crimson Oak Pond, and I'm pretty excited today because we're getting started on our next pond build that's going to have a giant waterfall and a stream leading down into a 30,000 gallon pond that's going to have a beach area, bass coves, a big wetland filtration system, and will be by far one of the coolest ponds I've ever worked on. But before we get started, I want to explain how we came up with the idea to build this new pond. So during our 5-acre pond build, we dug out this pocket that we called Clyde's Cove. But unfortunately, we never dug it out deep enough, so it didn't hold enough water for the fish to utilize it. So earlier this spring, I dammed it off with some clay and created a small pond that we were going to use as an experimental pond for growing prawns. And that was a really fun project that turned out great. We grew some giant freshwater prawns and ended up feeding those to the aggressive tiger bass in the 5-acre pond. But now that prawn season is over, I drained the pond, and it's time to move on to the next phase of this project. So I reached out to Greg and Ed, the guys over at Aquascape, because I wanted to build something really special in this area. And we collaborated with them on our very first pond build 5 years ago, and they built us a beautiful bass pond with a waterfall feature in our backyard. So I wanted to build something that looks similar to this, but on a much bigger scale. So after several months of planning and logistics, the Aquascape guys are in town, and it's time to get started. So one of the most important components of these aquascape ponds are the big stones and boulders that make up the waterfall and create that natural look around the pond's edge. So in my opinion, the perfect stone for this project is called an aqua bluestone. But there's a couple of problems. They're not easy to find, and we need 100 tons of them for this project. And the only available resource for these in the United States is a company out of Wisconsin. So we hauled 100 tons of aqua blue stone from Wisconsin to South Alabama, and that took 4 18-wheelers loaded down with these beautiful stones and boulders. But one interesting fact about the aqua blue stone is it's a metamorphic rock that is formed beneath the surface of the earth, and it takes really high amounts of pressure and heat to form these stones, and that makes them extremely dense and very heavy. But the good news is, we overcame one of the biggest challenges of just getting all of this rock to the pond site. And one of the first issues we were dealing with this existing pond is getting rid of that thin layer of mud so we could get in there and start working. So our plan was to dig a big hole right near the pond site and excavate and move all of that mud into the hole. So we spent the first part of the morning scooping buckets full of that out until we had a nice clean surface to work with. And just like always, some of the best designs come from being sketched out on a notepad or a napkin. So let's listen in on what Ed the pond professor is coming up with for our build.
Beach access right here. So this would be nice little access walking down. This would be a shallower section, 2.5-ish feet or so in depth for some water lilies or something like that. So now you come into the beach, you got some aquatic vegetation. We have this waterfall coming in. This would be like a plunge pool, 12 to 18 inches deep, and then we'd shallow it up right where that seam is going to be. That would probably only be about 6 inches deep. So what that does is it creates a really good push of water, and then this opposing peninsula right here is really going to sweep all of this water coming down from your waterfall right in front of the beach. I prefer doing that because it keeps those beach areas nice and clean, highly oxygenated, water flowing through. Then the water is going to sweep itself around. We'll go into this deep hole, which is going to be 4 feet deep, maybe 4 to 4.5. Thinking that dock maybe kind of coming off of this peninsula here. I have full access into that deep water. This will go into our pumping system over on that side. Some more shallow sections over here for some aquatic vegetation. But this way you have access down to the main lake over on this side. So I don't know if once that dock is in, if you know, because it drops down pretty far there. Like if you wanted to do a staircase going down or something to a little access area by that shallow section. But now you have full accessibility to that whole area. Seating area could be tucked in between right over in here, or even right here could be a good spot. So again, once it's in, that'll tell us more. I'm thinking, you know, this would come in with some really nice big rocks in this little these peninsulas to accentuate those. So we can have it kind of closer this way, so we're not in that downslope area. Push it a little bit more that way, waterfall falling out, and then we could really turn it hard. We got to create a little bit more of a meander on this.
So now that we got a plan for the design, we got everything marked out with red paint, and it's time to begin the excavation. But one of the key features about this pond is I wanted to make sure there was a deep area so that the fish living in here could avoid the predators. So this bottom area we have excavated out is going to be about 4 to 4.5 feet deep. with a wide variety of different structure pieces as well as fish caves and tunnels. And you can see there's also going to be some shallower ledges that are 2.5 to 3 feet deep. And then the intake bay will be over here in this area. But one of the ideas I really liked with this design is we've got this nice big peninsula that sticks out into the pond. And that's going to be perfect for feeding the fish or just a good viewing area. And then the waterfalls will come into that pocket and the beach area will be over here. So we already talked about the 100 tons of stones and boulders we had to bring in. Well, that was just for the waterfalls and perimeter. So we're going to need 45 tons of smaller river rock and gravel. And a lot of this is going to be used in the intake bay, the wetland filter, and to cover the bottom of the pond. So now that we got the rock taken care of, the next key component is wood. So we have about 15 acres of swampy creek bottom here at the farm that we're going to go through and try to get some nice wood pieces. And we're looking for that wood that's going to be durable and tough, like the oaks and cedars. And we found some really cool looking pieces. This old cedar tree that had fallen over. And check out this giant oak limb. This came off of a live oak tree, and we measured it to be about 60 feet long. And thankfully, we have all this equipment here to get it hauled up to the pond, because this is one heavy limb. But after playing around with some angles, we finally got it strapped up and ready to haul out. Alright, Ed's going to explain the waterfall area for us really quick.
So what we're working on right now is the area where the waterfall is going to re-enter the pond. So what we're trying to do here is have really good circulation. We're drawing water in from the far corner. It's going to get pumped up into our wetland filtration system up at the top. Then we're going to have a series of cascading waterfalls coming back into the pond. But our goal is to create a big push of water. So what we want to have happening is the water is going to drop down into a little deep water pool. The water is going to well up a little bit. We're going to have this nice riverine type of an effect. So all of that water velocity is going to come right in front of the beach area, and it's going to work its way along this back edge, and it's going to start depositing fine sediments and things like that in the back area. So we're trying to think of like biomimicry type techniques, thinking about how the water's flowing and all the fine organic compounds. So I want to deposit all that stuff so that fast moving water is going to drop the fine sediments in the back, which is exactly where all of our aquatic plants are going to be located. Then from there it'll sweep its way under the dock, make its way back over to the pump system, and it's going to do a whole nother complete cycle.
Awesome explanation. All right, let's do a quick end of the day recap. We're getting close to being done with the excavation in the pond area. You can see that red line right there marks the water line for the beach. And that's just a pool where the waterfalls are going to dump into. We hadn't even started on the waterfall area. And we got the peninsula formed out, the intake bay ready. The next step is to bring the liner in and then start setting the stones. And we also got this really cool looking cedar tree. So I can't wait to see how these guys incorporate that into the pond. So just like with our last pond build, the moment the sun starts going down, all the wildlife comes out to see what their new home's going to look like. And look at that deer jumping on the pond's edge. You can tell how excited he is. And with our last pond build, that's definitely been one of the coolest parts of the project, was seeing how the wildlife come in and utilize it and basically make it their home. And this new aquascape pond is basically going to be an extension of that and probably bring in a whole new variety of species, because they're designed to be a complete ecosystem. And so we'll have aquatic plants, and that'll bring in frogs and toads, as well as a variety of insects. So it's going to be interesting to see the new creatures that come to hang out around this pond. So the does didn't seem to mind the construction work at all, but I think the bucks are going to be a little more skeptical. And after the last pond build and bringing in 800 loads of clay, I thought I'd never see this again, but it turns out we need a few for this pond as well. So this morning we're getting started on the intake bay area, and that's going to be completely different than our backyard pond and skimmer system. So the intake bay starts out with these aqua blocks, and then you'll have a layer of gravel on top of that and pumps down at the bottom. So the pumps will create a suction and force the water to come down through the gravel and aqua blocks, and then it'll get pumped back up to the wetland filter and waterfall area. So now that the lower part of the pond excavation is complete, the next step is to go in with a liner. And Aquascape likes to start out with a geotextile mat, which will be placed between the ground and the liner, and it'll help protect that liner. And since we're putting these big heavy boulders on top of the liner, we're going to come in and place another rock mat on top of the liner to protect it from the boulders. And on a side note, I was asking Ed if these 3 liners would be able to prevent a crawfish from burrowing through, and he said that shouldn't be a problem, so we'll probably be adding some crawfish to this pond at some point. So now that the liner's in place, it's time to start setting stones and one of my favorite things, building some fish caves. And this is the part of the pond build where the expertise from Ed the pond professor and the Aquascape crew really comes into play. So these guys have been building ponds for decades and are extremely talented when it comes to setting these big boulders and creating that perfect pond look. And it's really incredible to just watch them and their different techniques they have for setting these boulders and getting the angles just right. Because you may not be able to see it, but there's a ton of physics involved because some of these boulders weigh over 2,000 pounds. So getting the weight distribution just right, and the angles right, and the rock positioned like you want it, it's not an easy job, but these guys make it look very easy. But things are starting to come together. We got one of the first fish caves built, and they're continuing on setting some of these big boulders right here in this intake bay area, and we'll be explaining more of that here in just a minute. Alright, back down here in the old swamp bottom, they sent me down looking for a root system piece, and this is what I found. An old tree that's blown over, the roots right here are exposed. They didn't want it much more than about a foot in diameter on the tree, so I think this is the one for us. So we didn't want to use a chainsaw to cut the wood because it would give it an unnatural look. So we used the excavator to chop it in half. And I think it turned out perfect. So next up, we wanted to get this giant oak limb set in place. And the goal is to kind of use it as the pond's edge. So if you can just imagine that part where the liner meets the ground, you never want to have any open exposed area, so a big long limb like this can work as a nice edge piece to give it a good natural look from where the water meets the ground. And it took a couple hours to get this set in the perfect place because, again, the Aquascape crew are meticulous about all of those small details. So we used some flat boulders to kind of lift the limb up and get it to the perfect water level so that half the tree would be exposed and the other half would be underwater. And today's video is brought to you by ShipStation. And if you own a small business or ship out multiple packages throughout the year, then ShipStation is a perfect fit for you. They can help simplify and automate your shipping and even provide discounted rates of up to 84% off UPS and USPS rates. And as most of you all know, Liz and I own a tackle shop called BamaFrogs.com, where we sell all the fishing products that we've used in our videos over the past several years. And over the course of a year, we ship out thousands of packages, and ShipStation plays a key role in helping us manage those shipments, as well as saving money on shipping cost. And they've made the process quick and simple. We pack all the items into a box, then hop online, where ShipStation is integrated into our Shopify website, and we select the package weight and dimensions, and out comes the shipping label. But they also provide many more features, including bulk shipments and real-time tracking. So if you're interested in checking them out and want to set up your business for a holiday season success, go to shipstation.com/BamaBass for a free 60-day trial. That is shipstation.com/BamaBass. And I'll have a link to that in the video description. Alright, a quick recap of the day. We got a lot of the stonework set. One of my favorite pieces right here is the fish cave. The bass and fish are going to love that. We also got this stump out of the swamp down there. We're going to add some extensions to this to make it kind of curl over and give those fish a little bit more structure and things to swim through down there. And keep in mind, a lot of this is protection from birds like the blue herons, possibly even raccoons. You know, we don't want these fish just swimming around out here in the open. We want to have plenty of places for them to hide. We also got the intake bay in place. We'll be explaining that more here in just a minute. But the big story of the day, the giant oak limb that's set right there at the water's edge. That is one massive piece of wood. So the dock will be going right here in this area. We'll have a lot of underwater plants, water lilies, things of that nature. But I love the way these rock formations are turning out. Looking down here on the liner, looks like we have some raccoon claws. So the first night it was the deer, and the second night it's our little bandits. And we've got a lot of raccoons around here, and we've never had any issues with them, but I will be interested to see when we fill this pond up with water if the raccoons come in and try to eat any of the fish. Right now I don't think they will. They've got so much to eat around here, but I'll be keeping a close eye on them. So the next morning we're just doing more of the same, coming in and setting the stones. You can see the guys are getting prepped for the dock area. We're going to be pouring cement and setting the pilings later. And we got fish cave number 2. It's a little bit smaller, but a perfect little hideout for all the fishies. So the next little project is we're going to be adding some cedar branches to the root system of this tree to make it look like it grew here in this natural environment. And this creates a perfect environment for the bass. They love stuff like overhanging branches and root systems, including laydowns and fallen trees. And we'll come back later in the project with some moss and aquatic plants to make it look even more natural. So at this point, all the stonework is looking great, and you can kind of start to see the pond take shape, especially that lower deep area. And the guys are just continuing setting the stones. It's a long, tedious process, but it's looking great. So we got the stonework completed around one of the pond's edge, and we were backfilling it with some dirt when we had a little surprise. And you guys know me, I am no snake expert, so I like to stay away from them. But Ed was curious, and he had to know if he was venomous or not, so he had to take a closer look at him.
Snake.
Turns out, we all think it was just a harmless water snake. If you guys think any differently, leave it down in a comment below. But Ed found him a little friend on this project. So now let's check in on some things that are happening in the 5-acre pond. So as I was flying the drone this week, I started noticing more and more of what looked to be albino fish. And as I got closer, I could tell that that's some of the tilapia that we stocked earlier in the year. And I'm not really sure what's happening, and maybe this is common in tilapia, but it looks like they're losing their color, because a lot of them had that bluish look whenever we put them in. But now it looks like we have a ton of albino tilapia. And that's probably going to attract every osprey and eagle for miles. But speaking of eagles, I'm happy to say that we finally had one fly into the area and start checking out the eagle tower. So this eagle has basically been with us this entire week and has flown by the eagle tower that we put up several times, but hadn't committed just yet to landing on it. But if you take a closer look, it kind of looks like this is the juvenile bald eagle that we were seeing a bunch earlier this year, but it looks like his head's finally starting to turn white. So it's either that or it's a new eagle that's came to the area, because the two we have previously seen have pure white heads. But speaking of the eagle tower, this is our eagle tower cam. We get a wide variety of different birds that come up, and you can see this little guy is stopping by to eat lunch today. And while we're on the bird topic, got a really cool shot of the kingfisher. He's got some really cool color patterns there on his chest. Now let's check in on the Bonnie Bayou cam. It's always one of the hot spots on the pond and has become a drinking hole for most of the wildlife. Here's a couple deer stopping by early one morning. And a couple of young bucks fighting over this corner of the pond. And we even have the eagle diving down trying to catch probably one of those albino tilapia. But it doesn't look like he was successful this time. A couple guys passing through at sunset. And there's another nice buck. And they're starting to show early signs of the rut, even though that's still quite a ways away. And Mr. Longneck coming through, trying to snag one of our fish. And now one of my favorite things to do at night is come out on the dock and feed our tiger bass. And you can see a lot of them have gotten more comfortable with coming up to me because they know it's going to be an easy meal. But one thing I wanted to talk about really quick is what type of fish you would like to see us stock in this new pond. So it's going to be pretty big at around 30,000 gallons, and there's going to be a ton of hideouts and caves and different places for fish to hide, which always increases the capacity of fish that you could put in. So I'm definitely open to trying new species for this pond that we hadn't put in our previous ponds. So one of the things I was thinking about doing is catching some of the small tiger bass that spawned in the 5-acre pond this year that are only about 2 to 3 inches long right now, and putting them in the pond so we could watch them grow. But I want you guys to leave a comment down below on any new type of species you'd like to see me put in the pond. And just a hint for an upcoming video, there's a good chance you may be seeing some rainbow trout. Alright, time for another experiment. So in the last video, we tested out 2 different flavors of this Acorn Rage. We did the real acorn flavor versus the apples and the acorn one. So today we're going to test it out versus a different product, even though it's similar. This one's called Dirtbag. It's dried up molasses. Alright, pals, the Acorn Rage and Dirtbag there. We'll keep an eye on them with the camera and see which one they like more. This deer was so hungry he came out just a couple minutes after I left, right in the middle of the day. But hey, look at there, it's our friend, one of the spotted fawns. We're starting to see him regularly. You can see his deer sense is kicking in. He probably knows that's not a natural food source already. But it looks like Mama Deer finally came by to show him it's alright to eat it. There's a buck licking his lips, enjoying the acorn pile. And there's also a mama doe in the background with 2 twin fawns. And we've started seeing those come around. A little deer fight. And it seems like the acorn pile is the favorite as of now. But I've had fun doing these experiments, doing a product comparison side by side. And as always, you guys can leave a comment if you'd like to see me test some new product in the future. And there's a close look at the 2 twin fawns. And early the next morning, looks like they wiped out both piles. Alright, back out here the next morning, and both piles are gone. That's where the dirt product was. That's where the acorn product was. You can see they've kind of even dug a little hole. So good stuff. I'd say that one was a tie. But every morning, the little fawns have been coming out here to eat the grass. So I think I'm going to go sit up there. I've got a little latch-on stand on that tree. I think I'm going to go sit up there and see if I can get a better look at those fawns. Look at there, the 2 twins showed up. And it looks like they can't find their mom. So if you listen closely, you'll hear them bleating. Alright, time to check in on Moby in the backyard pond and do some fish feeding. And we had several questions about where we get our golden shiners from. And that's Anderson Minnow Farm. You can buy them online, they ship them overnight. And we usually have about 95% of them alive and healthy when they get here. So now let's take a quick underwater look and see what's going on today. Got the whole gang hanging out right in front of the camera. Even got the turtle coming over to say hello. So now it's time to check in on the newest member of the pond, and that's the giant bullfrog. He only comes out at night. But he's one of the reasons we have to get 1,000 golden shiners every week, because he is putting a hurting on them. That's a big bluegill right there just for comparison, and he's much bigger than that. That's how you know he's a big boy, when Moby doesn't even think about messing with him. Now it's time to feed Mr. Tiger. So for this pond build, it's probably going to be broken up into 2 or 3 videos because we've at least got 8 full days scheduled for a pond build of this size. So a huge shout out to all the Aquascape team that came out to help this week on this build. I'm going to have all of their contact information listed down in the video description, so if you're interested in a build, definitely look up one of those guys and they'll take great care of you. But this pond build is unique because it's one of Aquascape's regional events. So the last 2 days of this pond build is going to be opened up to any new contractors that are looking into getting into the pond building business. So if you're a landscaper or something like that, and want to get into building ponds, I've also got a link down below for you where you could register to come out on the last couple days of this pond build and help us complete it and learn from the best. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I cannot wait to show you some of the cool features and ideas that are coming up in the next part of this pond build. But make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can follow along, because you're going to want to see this one once it's completed. But I hope you all enjoyed this video, and we will see you all next time.